Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to visit North Korea soon, possibly as early as next week. This will be his first trip to Pyongyang in around 7 years. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Andrew Millard, head of the Department of International Relations at Changwon National University. Professor Millard, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again.
So, what could Xi's visit mean for security on the Korean Peninsula?
So, as you just said, firstly, this has not been 100% confirmed that Xi is actually going to visit Pyongyang. However, all of the signs are very strong that he will be visiting, and probably very soon, within the next couple of weeks. Now, this is very important because over the past few weeks especially, Xi Jinping has been very busy in China. He's had delegations coming in from the US, from Russia, from Pakistan, from Serbia. So far in 2026, Xi Jinping has not been outside of China. So this is quite significant that he's choosing North Korea, that he's choosing Pyongyang for his first overseas summit of the year. Now, why is he doing this? Arguably, it's because even though we have the China, Russia, North Korea sort of partnership that is growing, over the past couple of years, within that, really, North Korea and Russia have been deepening their ties, especially in security and sort of security partnerships and so on. And so really, this is an opportunity for Xi Jinping to go to Pyongyang and say, look, China is still a key strategic partner in Northeast Asia when it comes to security issues. Of course, he's likely to discuss other trade issues and things like that, but really I think security is going to be the key one. And basically at the moment we see North Korea and Russia developing those ties. China has been pushed a little bit to the side, so he'll want to make sure that China is at the forefront of all security issues in North Korea, in the region.
Right, and this week Singapore's foreign minister was on a rare trip to both South and North Korea, and he was a member of the cabinet in Singapore when the country hosted the first summit meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the United States in 2018, right? So some analysts see this as North Korea's way of indirectly sort of signaling to Washington that it's open to dialogue again. What's your take on this?
So again, they're very sort of secretive. Nothing has been made clear. Nothing has been sort of made official. So when we have these Singaporean summits going to, and it's been China, North Korea, South Korea, so it's not specifically to North Korea, we can't really read too much into it until after it's happened and they make some official statements about what has been discussed. Now, on the other hand, generally, North Korea has been quite indirect in sort of announcing its sort of changes in policies, whether it wants to participate in dialogue or not. So that's another signal that maybe there is some change happening. But again, we shouldn't really read too much into it as of yet. So far, there's been no major indication from North Korea that it's ready to restart dialogue, and especially to restart negotiations, even if it does start dialogue. Now, on the other hand, we could also say that for North Korea, this is a perfect opportunity to start dialogue because we have the US just been to China, and Donald Trump has quite a good relationship with Xi Jinping. Generally, Donald Trump has had a pretty good relationship with Vladimir Putin in Russia as well. And so we could say that actually for North Korea, maybe now is a good time to restart the dialogue, and they can do it through Singapore.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes then. North Korea this week said it tested AI-guided missiles and artillery rockets designed for modern warfare. So how exactly are how advanced are North Korea's weapons capabilities at this point?
In terms of how advanced their capabilities are, it's really hard for anyone to say unless they're in North Korea. We should be quite careful. A lot of countries, but especially North Korea, will say things that maybe are not entirely true. However, it was quite significant, and there's a couple of things we should look at. Firstly, these tests were with short-range missiles, so really they're only sort of focusing on really South Korea. These short-range missiles, they're not going to go to China, obviously, or Russia. They're not really going to go to Japan. So this was a little bit of a warning to South Korea. Maybe the North saying, look, we know in South Korea, semiconductor AI is booming. We are not far behind. So don't make that mistake that North Korea is not advancing either. But we also need to ask this question, where is this technology coming from? Is this being developed inside North Korea based on their own technologies? Or, and I think more likely, is this showing the further deepening security ties alliance between North Korea and Russia, who may be supplying the North with this AI capabilities? But altogether, on the whole, I don't think we should be surprised that North Korea is using AI. Any country that is not looking towards that is going to be behind. So I think it's not that unexpected.
I see. And as for South Korea, the country is seeking to launch its first nuclear power submarine by the mid-2030s, and that's aimed at countering the North submarine-launched nuclear missile threats. So could you just briefly tell us how realistic this goal is?
On the whole, it's relatively realistic. It's maybe a little bit aggressive. So if we compare, for example, with the AUKUS deal, so the Australia, UK, US deal from a couple of years ago, they are looking to, again, take delivery of the first submarines in the early 2030s. So similar sort of timeline, around 10 years. However, in South Korea, there may be a few more obstacles. So again, next week, they're going to have these security talks. Really, the issue of nuclear fuel in South Korea, it's a little bit more sensitive than it was in Australia for various reasons. So that may be an issue that slightly delays the production. But also, if we have production of 10 years, we also need to consider that the operations of these submarines are going to be very different. The training of the sailors, the maintenance, all of these issues come into effect. So I think if they're quite aggressive, it's relatively realistic, but we should be looking mid-30s to late 30s, in all honesty.
I see. All right, Professor Millard, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.